You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. And I'm your host, Jana Short. Today we're here with Dan Murray-Surter. Dan is a multi-award winning serial entrepreneur who talks openly about failure, mental health, mental performance, and brain care, which includes his journey using science to build habits, cultivating a positive mindset, and the importance of nutrition for optimizing your brain's health. Dan is a co-founder of Heights, a brain care company that makes the highest rated supplements for mental health and performance that help high achievers become more productive, focused, and mentally fit. Dan, I'm so excited to have you here because I don't think we ever talk about we talk about mental health for people with problems, but how do we maintain the health of our brain, which is so important. So one of the first things we want to ask you is to share a story of hope on the show. So if you don't mind doing that.
Absolutely. So my story of hope is actually going to be the thing that led me into starting Heights. And that is that I went through a period of really chronic insomnia and anxiety. So I went through 6 months of insomnia. So very, very little sleep in that time, as you can imagine. And I, during the days was manifesting my lack of sleep and energy spikes and all this stuff with, panic attacks in quite unfortunate places like board meetings and family dinners and, quite embarrassing places to be having problems like that, where you don't really know, you get hot and cold sweats and all of these things. I went through this period of just thinking that nothing was going to cure me, right? And 6 months is a very long time and just my symptoms, by the way, was I'd get to sleep around midnight out of sheer exhaustion, but I'd wake up at 2 a.m. wide awake. And that would happen every single night, no matter what I did. I went to the doctor, he gave me sleeping pills. I went to a therapist, I went to a sleep therapist. I tried all the meditation apps. I tried, no alcohol, more alcohol, no coffee, more coffee, like you name a thing, and I would have tried it. And, at the end, I'd given up hope. After 4 months, I would say, I was assuming that for whatever reason this had happened to me, this was my new reality. So I was going to have to just deal with it. 5 months in, I had basically just essentially try to fit my lifestyle around the knowledge that I was never going to get more than 2 hours sleep. So it was getting a bit ridiculous. And I actually went for dinner with a friend who just looked at me straight up and said, "Have you ever heard of brain health nutrition?" And I was like, "No, I don't know what you mean. That sounds like a very random thing to say to someone." And she's like, "Well, you're telling me about your symptoms. You told me all of the things you've tried, but it doesn't sound like you've really, thought about your brain as an organ that needs to be fed." And I was like, "Well, no, because this is all jargon to me. I'm not a nutritionist. I don't really understand what you mean." She's like, "Well, why don't you go and see a dietitian? Why don't you go and see a nutrition professional and explain your symptoms and see what happened?" And I did. And the dietitian diagnosed me in the space of literally a minute by me explaining what I'd done. She just said, "You've clearly got your mental health problem is essentially a brain health problem. And a lot of mental health problems are brain health problems. But the problem that we have is we think of a mental health problem and we think of mental performance. So, this is below the baseline and going above the baseline. We think about these things as psychological issues only. So people that come to my clinic, usually I'm the last place people go because they've already been to see their therapist and they went to see the sleep therapist and they went to see someone on chronic anxiety and they went to see, starts listing all the things I'd done. And I was like, yeah. She was like, "Well, people don't think to come for nutrition, but if you've got a mental health problem that is a brain health problem, then nothing that you do to help your psychological issues, if they exist or don't, but nothing you do there would actually get to the root cause of the problem or solve it, because you've got a biological and physiological issue going on, and your brain is literally giving you alarm signals so repeatedly until you come and do something about it and get to the right course. So she did a really great job of just explaining this to me. And long story short, she prescribed me supplements for sleep. So she prescribed me DHA omega-3, B vitamin complex, and blueberry extract for her whatever reasons. I know the reasons, but I don't want to bore you with the detail. Certainly not yet. So she was like, just take these, and they have to be super high quality. So I'm giving you a prescription. They have to be the scientific dosages. You can't just go to a high street, pharmacist and get them. You need them to be really high quality. And then let me know how you get on. And within a week, I called her to tell her that I just had my first 2 nights sleep in a row. I thought the one might be an anomaly, but 2 nights sleep in a row, sleeping till 7 a.m. It felt amazing. She was genuinely so unexcited for me. I was very excited, but she was very unexcited because her response was, yes, I know. And I was like, well, what do you mean? She was like, well, I knew that they would work because you basically had already told me that you tried all the psychological things, right? You've already tried to cure your anxiety and your insomnia for 6 months now by going to figure out all of these things. So this is kind of what's left. So I'm not surprised it worked. This happens to so many people that come to me in my clinic, and it always works. It's a nutritional deficiency, and now you're feeding your brain. It's getting what it needs to thrive. It's not my opinion. It's a scientific fact of what it needs to thrive. It's happy with you. So now you can sleep. And it was just so it was so funny the way that she explained it to me in such a British, unsympathetic way, that really gave me this a huge spring in my step and excitement for an opportunity to work in this space. The hope that I share is we come into contact at Heights so often all the time with people struggling with anxiety and sleep. Those people, and of course, if you're struggling with anxiety and sleep, like any mental health problem, you might indeed have a psychological issue. You might have a background with these problems and all this stuff. But my situation, which is common as well, was it just happened out of nowhere. I didn't do anything different. I wasn't unhappy. I didn't suddenly have some issue happen in my life that caused me any greater anxiety than being an entrepreneur already does. So it just happened out of nowhere. And when I went down this rabbit hole, the last place I went was nutrition. The hope that I can share with people is understanding a very clear, fundamental scientific fact, which is that when trying to improve our mental health, I don't want to say cure because it's a journey, and also mental health is a spectrum as well. There's a lot of different things in there, a lot of different things, positive and negative as well. Peak performance, still mental health, it's just positive mental health. So wherever you are on the spectrum, when you're trying to achieve more and get slightly better from the place you're already at, it's great to know that it is not all just about how you think. It isn't all about mindset. It isn't all about your past problems, and it isn't all about the psychological impacts of what's making you anxious and uncomfortable in the world. Sometimes it's a physiological, biological requirement, and knowing that can actually unlock a huge opportunity to feel better, to sleep more, to have more energy in the day. And we know this stuff to be true for our physical health, right? We literally, it's common sense when we think about the impact that food has on our physical health. So extrapolating that and saying that the same thing is true for our mental health has, for me, created an end to my insomnia, and pretty much certainly an end to all my chronic anxiety. I'm still human. I still get anxious in a pandemic. But it has definitely helped, and it's helped so many, not just of our customers, but people that hear me on podcasts talking about it. And I get messages from people saying, I actually took your advice. I went to a nutritionist. I went to a dietitian. I looked into something different, and it made a huge impact. And that is my story of hope, which is that you can think that you're never going to sleep again, and you can think that your anxious reality will always be your reality. But actually, there's a lot more to unlock. And sometimes these are huge opportunities that can really, really help. So I hope that if anyone is listening and suffers from these things, they consider the power of nutrition and supplementation that can really help you get back to your baseline and starting to thrive.
By the way, I love that story because I feel that we forget about our brain health. Like we listen to our heart and our lungs, and like we're all into other health because our brain just is functioning until it's not or it starts to slow down. But as you get older, like I'm getting older, I'm in my 60s now, and I
Wow.
noticed that, yeah,
Whatever
totally.
you're doing, I'll have what you're having.
Thank you. But I know that it's harder for absorption rates as you get older, and for you
Yep.
to continually maintain that brain health and heart health and all the other health that you want to, maintain. So taking supplements and starting out before your body actually is desperate for them is so key. And I loved everything I saw on your website. What led you to creating Heights?
Yeah, so this moment created a springboard almost for me to just say, I am I'm a deeply curious person, and once I'd had this personal experience, I really wanted to share it with more people. So I have an innate distrust for general social media influencers, broadly speaking, but particularly around things like nutrition. It's kind of what had led me to some of my problems in the first place, in that if everyone's a nutritionist, no one is. It's kind of like my mindset, right? So, I'm not sophisticated enough to know the difference between, for example, a registered nutritionist and just someone else that takes a course over a weekend and tells me what to eat and have, and because they are beautiful and look great and have the body that I want, that I should follow them, versus someone who actually knows best. So I had this sort of issue where I was like, well, that's kind of how I feel about it. What's the opposite of that? Well, the opposite of that is science. So scientists, especially, don't get any credibility. They get loads of credibility. They don't get any fame, no recognition. No one reads their papers. They're doing the hard work. So I was like, well, I'm going to start a newsletter, which is going to talk every single week. So a 3-minute read, which I'll send every Sunday. And it will talk about what science says you can do to take care of your brain. And not my opinion. I don't want to become an influencer, but I fast forwarded and thought, well, if I'm talking about this regularly and I'm becoming a voice in this space, people might consider me an influencer in the brain health space, but I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a nutritionist. I don't want to claim to be those things. So what is my thing? How am I going to help people? And I was like, well, I'm a good communicator. So I'm going to read the science papers and I'm going to link to them every week, but I'm going to literally create, millennial language, make it fun, make it interesting and engaging, make a good piece of content every week that people can subscribe to and learn one thing each week that science says you can do to take care of your brain. Whilst I was doing that, I was building up essentially an audience, a community. They were being so engaged with the topic as we were growing, that we started to ask them, what kind of products do you take? What do you take? What don't you take? Why? And the more I was learning about this space, the more I learned about how, sadly, most people take supplements. Most people stop taking supplements. Lots of people start a habit, but they don't continue it. Lots of people don't really know why they're taking what they're taking. And then as I started to learn more about the space, I learned that most supplements are actually full of shit. So they're actually full of caking agents and bulking powders and all of these things you're not really buying when you're buying the products. And then I also learned that, there's a massive difference between the marketing and the scientific dosage that goes into supplements. These are all things that, to me, as an entrepreneur, are huge opportunities and problems to fix. Because if you buy, for example, 7Cs, I'll give you one example. 7Cs I use because they're such a big company, it's almost impossible to sound insulting, like I'm insulting a competitor. They're like a behemoth. So 7Cs is the #1 best-selling omega-3 oil in the world. Their #1 product, a DHA omega-3, which is for your brain and heart health, they put in 45 milligrams of omega-3 per day in their daily dose. And the reason is because that is the internationally recognized minimum amount you have to put in to make a marketing claim like supports a healthy brain. However, science says the right amount per day is 250 milligrams. So you have to basically take their product, their best-selling product in the world in this space, and they're the best-selling brand. You have to take their product for 6 days in a row to get 1 day's worth of what science says you need. And because it's a marketing loophole, but legally impacted, there's a little asterisk on the front of these boxes, and on the back is tiny small print telling you the truth. So the whole industry is set up this way in supplements, which is that they're basically geared up to make a profit. That's okay, fair enough. But the level, the gap, the delta between where you can make a profit and actually what a consumer is buying a product for, which is for healthy brain function or healthy whatever the thing is, whatever the purpose of buying that supplement is, that blew my mind. I was like, I can't believe that's such a big gap, because if you get 30 days worth of a product, but you need to take that one for 6 days just to get 1 day's worth of what science says, you're basically being conned. So this is where I started to get really nerdy on ingredients and quality and sourcing ingredients. And I learned so much stuff in this journey that we ended up creating our own products because we had this perspective. So we started to learn basically from the science papers. You mentioned that you're in your 60s. Whether you're in your 60s or you're in your 30s, the nutrients that are so good for your brain will have a massive impact on how you sleep, how you feel, your memory, your brain fog. But then from 60s onward, from 50s onward, brain health starts to become a thing you're interested in general because of obviously cognitive decline. So that's the story that's not interesting until you're 50. And from the age that you're 50, it's interesting again. Or for the first time, I should say. So we started to learn, fortunately, what are the nutrients that really are scientifically backed to help prevent against cognitive decline? Where do they come from and what do they do? Actually, most of them are very similar. They are DHA omega-3. Vitamin D plays a good role. Blueberry extract, because it's an antioxidant, helps as well. B vitamin complex, super important for your energy and blood supply to the brain, and basically how quickly the synapses fire. So these things all helped us really understand the idea for creating a single product. It's 2 capsules a day, but a single product that we could basically create for brain care. The cool thing we did, and I think this is cool, is we looked for the best ingredient suppliers everywhere around the world. So our omega-3 comes from an algae farm in Nova Scotia, and our blueberry extract comes from blueberry farmers in Italy. We really each ingredient has been responsibly sourced from not always a different place, obviously, not for the sake of it, but we looked for who is the best supplier of that ingredient. Why is it so important? Why is it such high quality? How is it sustainable? It's all plant-based. And then we put it all together in a patented capsule, which again, you mentioned earlier about bioavailability. Our capsule is a patented duo capsule. I mean, I'll show you in the image. It's not very good for podcast listeners, so I'll describe it too. But it is it's a capsule within a capsule. So just dropped it. The omega-3s are on the outside, if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So omega-3 is on the outside, and then we've got a capsule that's injected on the inside. And the reason we did that is because when you're taking a supplement, your body wants to absorb the fat. If you don't absorb it with fat, you need to take most supplements with food. Omega-3 is fat. So when you take our product, you don't need to take it with food. It's got full bioavailability into your bloodstream and gut anyway. And that meant that customers were able to build a habit, a healthy habit. So most people take it first thing in the morning. You can take it without food. We've created, a unique bottle so that it stays out of the supplement cupboard. It's the other thing, people buy supplements, put them in a cupboard and then forget about them. And our job is to help people take care of their brain. So we've really put all the thought that we could. And then, the final thing in the production cycle that I'll just say in terms of the journey is we update our product all the time. So we've still only got one product. After a year and a half of being launched, we've just got one product that we sell on our website. And the reason is because we think like a technology company in that we're always upgrading our product. So if you buy a supplement, usually from a retailer, it'll sit in the back office, right? It'll sit in the storage cupboard for maybe a couple of years. That's how long the shelf life is. But for us, we constantly look for higher quality ingredients, improving the quality of our product. And every time you improve a nutrient inside a supplement, you're reducing space. And every time you reduce space, you might have space to create and to add a new vitamin inside. So this is something we've just done, for example. We've just, because of the COVID research, we've upped our dosage of vitamin D from what it was before to now it'll have the actual recommended dosage of vitamin D for COVID. Not because COVID's got anything to do with brain health, but vitamin D story on brain health is immunity. So what's good for your immune system is good for your brain. We're literally able to increase the dosage of vitamin D in our product as opposed to what someone else might do, which is sell a separate vitamin D product. So we're not about trying to sell too many products to our audience. We're here to say we literally make the best product in the whole world for brain health. If that's not true at any time, we'll update it. So it gives you a really interesting competitive advantage to anyone else. We're not just trying to sell you 5, 6, 7 different products. We're creating this one for an everyday brain health. And then our next product that's been in development for 2 years, it's called a psychobiotic, which is a probiotic and prebiotic, but just for cognition and mood. So it's going through its scientific trial at the moment, but really excited for that. So the way that we think about how we're engaging with our community is trust. We're here to demonstrate that we've thought environmentally about where our products come from, that we're socially conscious people, so this is really important to us. We think about our supply chain, where the ingredients come from, but most importantly, what you put inside your mouth and then feeds your brain has to be the highest quality fuel because it's your most important organ. So there's a lot of trust involved from people, right? So if we're making these, claims about it being quality, we can't fall down anywhere. So I've just done loads of talking, I apologize, but very passionate, as you can tell, about the amount of effort and research that we put into every single nutrient that goes in here. And there's 20 nutrients that go into the 2 capsules every day.
Well, I am a huge fan, and I have a daughter, I was telling you, of doctor of natural medicine, and she also has a PhD, and she loved it. Like, she was like, unfortunately, it is impossible to get what our bodies need from food anymore. It just can't happen. You have to do some sort of supplementation and looking for the highest quality, again, where you're pulling those ingredients from, and we don't want to deplete the world of something that's amazing. We want to make sure it's renewable. And it sounds like you're hitting all of those marks. One of my favorite things was, before we got on this podcast, I went and looked around at your website. I've been using your product for 2 weeks now, and I'm loving it. And I already noticed a difference in my sleep. Although I slept really good, it feels like I'm sleeping more, definitely deeper, if that makes sense. But
yeah, we
falling
get that
asleep,
feedback a lot.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm in deep sleep right away. And when I wake up, I'm very refreshed. So I have noticed a difference in my sleep. But I went and took your test that you have on your website. We're going to put the link in there for it. I suggest all of you go in there and take this test, this braincare test. I loved it. I always have to do really well on a test, right? So I want to what can I do to get better, right? And how do I hit those bigger numbers? Although I don't think I hit such a bad number, but I would.
No, you did well.
It's a free test for you to go and see where you're at. And it's just between you and the test to know, what can I be doing for my brain health? We take care of our hearts. We're out there jogging and running and trying to watch what we eat, but we're forgetting about our beautiful minds, which control the entire system of our body. So I love that you have this. And I started researching before we got on the call too, to see how many other brain supplements that were focused on this. There isn't really anything out there.
No, and the thing is, and this is the view that I have for the company, we call Heights a brain care company, and we're quite specifically not a supplement company. So, the way that we see our 10-year vision as a company is creating products, services, community all around brain care. So it doesn't have to all be supplements. But when we do create supplements, they are specifically to help improve your brain one way or another. And anyone else that does sell brain-related supplements also sells everything else. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I know as a consumer, when I'm actually in the market for something to be the best, I want to trust the specialist, right? So I want to go to the brand that really knows their stuff. It's, lazy examples here, but if I want running, I go to Nike. If I want, cycling, I might go to Rafa or, Peloton if I want the gear. But, you get my point, which is that, I like to choose the brand that says this is the number one thing that we are the best at and no one's better. That makes the choice really easy for me. So, whilst there are loads of places that you can go to buy supplements, our view is there's one company that can commit to being the absolute best at that specific area because it's all they focus on. And as a result of that, we have people like your daughter who, as you can imagine, people try and trip us up all the time, right? They're like, well, I mean, it sounds great. Let me get my daughter to review it, which I know is not what you did, but you get my point, right? You get that all the time from people. And then they come back and they're like, wow, she was impressed. Or we get, well, it sounds a bit too good to be true. I'm going to ask my nutritionist or I'm going to ask my dietitian. And then they come back and they're like, they liked it so much they became customers. So we know that the amount of scientific rigor that we put into it, there's so many science papers on our website, by the way, so much content. And a braincare podcast, where every episode is just 15 minutes. Like, we're really investing in helping people understand how to take care of their brain and just that. And we try and do it in a fun way as well, right? We're not trying to, we try to find this magical balance between science and curiosity. So trying to actually engage people, because if you say science, a lot of people say they love science, but they don't really read science because it's a bit boring, which is understandable. So our job is to be good communicators. If we can get across scientific messages that are going to help people get better. Sorry, my cat has decided to join the party. I've got two. One is extremely well behaved. The other just meows every time I'm on a call. What was I saying? Oh yeah, like our job is to demystify some of the complexities around the science and help you understand that it's totally possible to take a few very simple steps every single day and make a dramatic improvement, not just to your short-term health today, but your long-term health as well. And when it comes to brain care, at the end of the day, you face the same challenge I do, which is from the age of 25, our brains are declining. Our brain sizes are declining. That is not anything to panic about. It's just a scientific fact. So as soon as we wake up to the fact, we can create some really intelligent wellness intervention. There's so much brilliant work going on in well-being, but not enough around mental health. And this is the area that we think is so exciting because people really, they think of mental health as a very stigmatized term. There's a very negative, pejorative connotation, mental health, which is silly because we all have mental health. There's good mental health, there's bad mental health, there's lots of things in between, but everyone has mental health. But when you hear it, you just think bad. So our job is to try and reframe some of that. And this is where we came up with the idea of brain care. So I took inspiration from skincare, from hair care, from nail care, from oral care, right? These are industries that have really helped people understand that a little bit every single day makes a huge difference over the long term, right? Your skin doesn't look quite so amazing because you forgot a skincare routine, but you also didn't put skin cream on one day and look great. You committed to a process every day, a little bit, every single day. It makes a huge difference over the long term. And people understand that that's what the care industries do so well with. So we thought, well, let's not overcomplicate it. Brain care is our most important organ. It is decaying. Those things are facts, but we know because of neuroplasticity, so the brain's ability to adapt and change, we know that that is also in our arsenal to be a positive. So we can literally choose from any age, even in your 90s, you can choose to start making brain care a priority and start to do little things to improve your brain, and it will make a difference there and then. You'll never, it's the coolest thing about the brain and a story of hope in itself. You're literally never, ever too late to change. So however you were yesterday up until your life, today is always day zero. So that is like an amazing opportunity when it comes to brain care. This for us is like the galvanizing, motivating factor, right? We actually believe that we can make a humongous impact and dent in the world by helping to create a category. And we hope that Heights is one of many brain care companies. We hope that lots of different people come out and say that they're brain care companies too, because then we know that we're onto the right thing and we're making a difference.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show and like drawing awareness to caring for our brain, because we just think supplements are going to do it, and it's not the case. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I am a huge fan, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share about that. Where can they find your company, more information?
Yeah, so you can find my company at yourheights.com, YOUR, like reach your heights. So you can reachyourheights.com. Well, sorry, that's terrible. Just yourheights.com. I think I overcomplicated it. And at Your Heights on social media. And then you can find me at Dan Murray Serta on all social platforms. I'd be delighted to offer your audience a 10% off to try the product as well, of course. So Oh My Health 10. Does that work for you as a code?
I think that's amazing. Plus, I'm
Yeah, I'd
going
love
to put the link to your free
braincare
test that we,
yeah.
yes. Oh my
Please
gosh,
do,
it was
please do.
amazing. So we'll
Yeah,
put the
thank
link
you.
to the free brain care test, which you are going to find amazing. I just did it before we got on the call. I have been using the supplements for a few weeks now, but I just saw the test. So I'm like, well, I want to do it. And there's definitely room for improvement, but I didn't do too bad. So I would love for all of you to take your
you
test.
definitely did well. We'll see how you do in a few more weeks again.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show. And we're going to connect everyone to you.
Amazing. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show. That'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.